Radio.
You're listening to Cryptocurrent, the only podcast that explores the bold projects, exciting opportunities, and the growing reach of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Whether you've got skin in the game or you're just crypto curious, keep an open mind, enjoy the conversation, and stay cryptocurrent. Now here's your host, Richard Carthon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon, and today I got a very special guest out in Chicago. We've got Yan with Swan Bitcoin. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So before we get started, how about you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been doing startups for a long time. I come from a technology background. I actually grew up in the Soviet Union. So I came over to United States in 1989. I was 7 years old and grew up here, kind of got my first computer when I was a kid. My dad got me a Commodore 64, one of those old school little machines, and I learned to program on that and kind of grew up doing some coding. Went to school for computer science and linguistics and thought I was going to do machine translation. I was really into like AI and I wanted to basically work on Google Translate before Google Translate was a thing.
Wow.
But what ended up happening is I got into kind of like a few startups. I started working for startups. And I realized that I didn't really care about computer science as much as I did about building products. And kind of in a startup environment where just, things are crazy, things are happening, people are really, into what they're doing. And so I basically ended up as an early engineer and co-founder at a bunch of different startups, basically starting from the year 2000 onwards. And a lot of them were failures, which is, kind of like the run,
it's part of the game. It's part of the grind.
Exactly. Part of the game is you try and you fail and you learn. And I did a lot of different things. Worked on a social event planning startup, cloud computing thing, prediction markets, an airline reservation system, an online university. I kind of did a lot of different things. Yeah. And my biggest kind of claim to fame and success was something I did in 2012 with David Kalt, who started Reverb.com. And I joined him as a CTO and basically helped grow that company from just the two of us to 150 employees and doing $500 million worth of sales a year. And that was a place where it was a marketplace for musicians. It was like an Etsy, but you could, buy guitars and drums and stuff like that there. So we grew that product, from 2012 to 2018. And then I decided that I wanted to work on Bitcoin because, I had been kind of studying Bitcoin from 2016 onwards. I'd been kind of in the blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin, area and looking around, trying to understand what was going on. And when 2018 rolled around, I was pretty much sold on the idea that this was the most important thing I could be working on. So I left Reverb, and decided to work on Bitcoin. That's why I'm here today.
Awesome, man. So let's unpack that a little bit. What was your first introduction into the crypto and blockchain space?
So I actually learned about Bitcoin in 2011 from Slashdot, and I read about it. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't research it or anything like that. I just heard there's some open source payment thing that people are trying to do. And then I basically went on Mt. Gox, which was the exchange at the time. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. And I bought Bitcoin at $30, which it's awesome, right? Except for I made a really bad mistake because after that it went down. So $30 was the peak of that bubble, the 2011 bubble, pretty much $30. Went all the way down to $2. So I was like, okay, I've been had. This is a scam. I don't know what it is. And I basically sold it at $2. So ouch. So then basically ignored it.
If you had to take a guess, how many Bitcoin did you have at the moment?
Oh man, I don't even remember, but I think I put in around $1,000, I want to say. So whatever that was, think about 1,000. Yeah, it was, 30 or 40 Bitcoins at that price. Which I ended up dumping at $2 for just to save whatever little, because I felt like I'd been had, so I basically had to just dump it at the bottom, which is really bad. And then basically I ignored it for a while. I was working on startups, and 2013 rolled around, and there was another media cycle with Bitcoin. You heard about it again. So I went on and I saw Coinbase, and Coinbase was a lot more professional, looked really polished, right, compared to something like Mt. Gox, which was clearly very hacky. So I thought, okay, maybe progress has been made, right? And, the price was $1,000. So, okay, something's happening here that I don't understand. Again, I did not research it. I didn't read anything about it. And I just bought some just in case, right? And of course, the price went down again tremendously, right? It went from 1,000 to 300. So I was like, okay, every time I'm
You're like, no more.
like I'm just burned like twice, right? So again, even in 2013 on that second ride, I went down and I basically, this time I didn't sell it, but I pretty much just ignored it. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. I'm going to leave it just to see what happens. And again, I was so busy with Reverb. I was building it like, I was working on it full time and didn't have time to research Bitcoin or anything. And so then in 2016, when really I got back into the space because of my cousin who was researching Ethereum, and he was working for Microsoft's blockchain strategy. And he was like, he was telling me about Ethereum and telling me like there's all this blockchain stuff going on. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I started looking at it, and I spent probably, I don't know, almost a year. It's 6 or 7 or 8 months. I don't know, listening to podcasts, watching videos. I watched a lot of that Andreas Antonopoulos video. And it took me a while to sort through like what was going on. And I played with pretty much everything that was out there. And I finally kind of started understanding what was going on more as money. And that was this Andreas video, which I highly recommend people to watch, called Currency Wars, and this was, I think it was from 2016 or earlier. And he was talking about exactly what we're seeing today. Like he was talking about bailouts, bail-ins, governments confiscating money from people, putting capital controls on where you couldn't get money out of your ATMs. And it's like, this is still happening today, and it's probably happening worse, especially in the middle of this crisis. So after I watched that video, I started remembering that, like, I came from the Soviet Union, right? So it was a socialist economy, full price currency controls, everything. So I went to my parents and I asked them, like, what happened to our money when we left the Soviet Union? And they told me that the government allowed us to exchange $100 per person. When
wow.
We left. So I was like, what? Say that again. Say that into my good ear. It's not like we were rich or anything. We didn't really have a lot of money, right? But basically, you weren't allowed to own US dollars in the Soviet Union. It was like censorship, right? You couldn't, no media in or out, no people in or out, and no money in or out. Everything was completely locked down. So
yeah. No, I mean,
yeah.
I was just gonna say I want to stick on this point real quick because you're the second person that has really driven this point home. Another person that I had on previously was telling me how their family was Jewish, and when they came to the United States, one of the grandmothers had was like a gold pendant, and like they took it, and so by the time they got here, they had nothing. So like even when they came to the U.S., when they got cash, they wouldn't even put it in the bank; they would just store it somewhere. They'd hide it somewhere just so they could always make sure that they had something that couldn't be taken from them.
Yeah, so my family's Jewish too, and we had, obviously there's stories like during the Holocaust and stuff, like Jews did all kinds of crazy stuff, and people swallowed diamonds and gold and try to like, retain their wealth in some fashion. And most people, thankfully have never had to experience that kind of thing. But the funny thing is that because we're going to this digital money system, like everybody's, all money is becoming digital, right? Whether we like it or not, we have PayPal and Venmo and Apple Pay and whatever. And one thing that we kind of forget is like all this convenience we have with the digital payments is also very convenient to turn them off or take them from you, right? And I always bring up the example of like, okay, we live in America. It's a free country, right? We're supposed to have liberty with our money and everything, right? So in theory. But look, cannabis just got legalized in Illinois, right? Where I live. I have cannabis shops here. If I go to a cannabis shop, I can't use my credit card and I can't use Apple Pay, right? Because it's still federally illegal. So those companies won't process your payments. So the only reason you can have any freedom, to buy cannabis is if you have cash, like physical green, pieces of paper. So what happens when all of that becomes digital, right? All of a sudden, all that freedom is gone. So that's, to me, having like, kind of Jewish ancestors and also coming from Russia and having essentially our wealth stripped from us, I know that these things that Andreas talked about in Currency Wars were very real and were happening. And so that's kind of when I decided, okay, Bitcoin is the thing that really matters the most. We need to have freedom of money. And like, why did I go to work on Reverb was because I wanted to do something kind of good for the world. Like music was at that time, okay, bringing music to people seemed to be, a good mission, right?
A great mission.
A great mission. I still think it's a great mission. But I think there's something more important, which is freedom, right? Like the freedom to move around between countries, the freedom to use your money however you want. That's all tied together, right? If you don't have freedom of money, then you don't have freedom of speech. You don't have freedom of movement. None of those other freedoms work if you don't have money that you can use. Because in the very worst regimes that are the most locked down, it's money that gets you around in places, right? It's like what you pay bribes with to get out of places, right? So like in Russia, when it was illegal to own US dollars, what do you think bribes were paid in? US dollars. That's all the people wanted was US dollars,
right?
Because that was the only real currency, right? So it's the same with Bitcoin, where now Bitcoin has become that sort of black market currency for all these places in the world where it's illegal to, own any other currencies. You have to use this government mandated currency, but there's capital control, so you can't get like more than $100 a week out of the ATM. What are you going to do if you need to leave? Well, you can't do it with cash. They're going to take it from you at the border.
And before we transition into my next question, you brought up a good point about even the dark market. One of my previous guests talked about the dark web and how a lot of the money that's being used in that is via Bitcoin. And when you think about the market cap and where it's headed as more money, the world economy is so massive. It's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars.
Oh,
Bitcoin, the crypto market is around $200 billion right now. I think it eventually gets to $1 trillion market easy. And so like with that scale, there's just so much opportunity in this space and it's still so early. And I'm sure once you like recognize that, that's probably why you decide to even go even deeper and get started with this. So tell me about, Swan Bitcoin and like what made you think of the concept and like, why did you get it started and everything with that?
Yeah. So when I left Reverb in 2018, I knew I wanted to work, in the crypto space. I wasn't yet really, convinced of what I was supposed to be doing. So I said, okay, I'm going to just feel it out. I'm going to go and learn. I'm going to see what people are doing. So I started consulting with a lot of different startups, basically talking to folks, helping them with strategy, kind of, with my technology and product background. And I fell into consulting for a company called Blockstrat, which is a bunch of people that are kind of like Northwestern PhDs and Cornell PhDs. And they're working on a system for, block propagation, like making blocks move around faster, which is theoretically good for any cryptocurrency to be able to scale, right?
Right.
So I spent about a year with them, helping them with infrastructure and also learning about, Bitcoin and everything else. And by the end of that time, I sort of became more convinced that, while their product is interesting and will probably help some blockchains, that really Bitcoin was never going to do that. And the reason is because it relies on some kind of centralization. You have to tie yourself to essentially a corporate entity that's helping you run the network, even though they have ways of, running backups or whatever. Not important. Long story short, I decided that, out of all these sort of blockchains and cryptos that are out there, that Bitcoin was really the only one that had this true commitment to decentralization in a way that would make them reject anything like that. And that actually made me more sold on Bitcoin. The idea that Bitcoin couldn't be changed was very powerful. And after that, I started researching Bitcoin even deeper and started writing a book called Inventing Bitcoin, which talks about, how Bitcoin came to be, or at least how I imagine it could come to be, right? It kind of goes into why Satoshi created it using some of his own quotes, as well as the technology and the actual implementation of Bitcoin at a very high level. It's good for people who are, basic, just want an intro. It's only about 100 pages long. But after writing that book, I got into more and more conversations with Bitcoin startups. And I actually ended up on an advisory board to a public company as well called Riot. And Riot's a Bitcoin mining company. So they have this mine out in Oklahoma. We were doing strategy consulting for them. And I was thinking through a lot of stuff around what is the right thing to be building right now? Okay. Because as you said, it is very early. And I 100% agree with that. I think people underestimate how early we are in the adoption of this thing. And because in the media, you have this hype like, oh, Bitcoin's going to $20,000. Now it's going to zero. Like it's just all this craziness. But if you look at what's actually going on, there's 0.5% of the world has any Bitcoin to speak of, let alone anything else, right? I mean, it's such a small penetration of this new money that people aren't ready for it yet. Yeah. So you kind of got to go back to where are we in the cycle? I mean, it's like 1995 with the internet, which is at which point the internet had like 0.5% of penetration in the world, 5% in America. It's kind of where we are with Bitcoin. I would say even earlier. So in 1995, a lot of people thought the internet was dead on arrival because it'd been 20 years. Let's keep it in mind how the internet the web came out in 93, but the internet had been around for a while. And people had been kind of like getting really fed up with waiting. They're like, this is going nowhere. E-commerce is never going to happen. People are talking about e-learning, whatever. None of this is going to happen. People were giving all these predictions that the internet wasn't going to go anywhere. And that's where we are with Bitcoin today. We're very, very early. So that led me to the idea, okay, well, we could be building all kinds of stuff. We could be building lending businesses, and there's, tons of great businesses like Unchained Capital and, things like that. And then there's like app layer businesses that are building, Lightning Network, payment processors, whatever. But to me, all of that stuff it's necessary and it's great that they're building it, but it's also very early, right? Because who's going to do Lightning payments when only 0.5% of the world has any Bitcoin, right?
Right.
You need to build the infrastructure, but you can't expect anybody to actually use it. So that led me to the idea that we need to have an on-ramp, right? We need to have more on-ramps for Bitcoin. And a lot of people will ask, well, like, isn't Coinbase an on-ramp? Aren't all of these exchanges on-ramps? And I would say they were. I think in 2013, Coinbase was an on-ramp. In 2013, when you went to Coinbase, it said buy Bitcoin, and you pressed the button and you bought Bitcoin. That's pretty decent on-ramp. But it became more than that. It became a trading platform. And now if I send, my mom or my dad or my friends to Coinbase, what do they see? Do they see a place to buy Bitcoin? No, they see a place to trade. And so now they're learning about 30 different cryptos. Now, I believe, I've been studying this stuff for a long time. And I think if you dig into the economics of it and how money works and how liquidity works, most of these coins, they're used by traders professionally to make money from people who don't understand any better. And these traders are primarily, what are they doing? They're accumulating Bitcoin or they're accumulating US dollars. They're typically not accumulating other things. They're really just trying to trade these other things against, US dollars or Bitcoin to build their stack. So I don't want to send my mom to a place where she's going to get fleeced by professional traders. That's not what I want her to do, right? What I want her to do is be saving a little bit of Bitcoin, 1% every paycheck or every month or whatever. And that would be what we call our freedom money stash, that stash of money for a rainy day. If God forbid, the Soviet Union happens here and like currency controls happen and, look, we're on lockdown already. Money's being printed like crazy. A lot of this stuff's already happening. So you need to have your freedom money stash. That's what Bitcoin's for. And that's why we decided to do Swan. It was kind of a joint concept between me and the founder, Corey Clipston, whose previous project, Give Bitcoin, was kind of pivoted into Swan. So me and him, I'd been advising him from early days of Give Bitcoin. And we decided that we did have room to compete with Coinbase because we wanted to have a really clear, really simple on-ramp to Bitcoin, which combined easy buying with recurring purchases, automatic withdrawals, and education. That's really the other missing piece. Like, people need to understand why. What are they buying? What's the point? What do they need this for? Right.
Right.
And so we pulled in a lot of the podcasters and authors of the space to try to help us with a nice educational curriculum and get people really, into what they're doing, because so many people have bought Bitcoin and forgotten about it, or didn't get, they bought a number that was going up and now the number went down and now they panicked and they sold,
Panic selling, right. And just understanding like, what's the point of it? What's not necessarily the utility, but every time that I talk to anybody about trying to get in the space, understanding like crypto, what are you purchasing it for? Are you trying to get rich quick? Are you looking at this as a 5 to 10 year investment opportunity? Like, my thing is like, if you're going to get into this space, you need to be okay with losing it all, period. Whatever you're putting in there, you have to like, just be okay with, if I lose all of this, it is okay. Is that most likely going to happen? No. Could it happen? Sure. So if you're going in there with that mindset and you're not putting in something that, if you're putting in something that you're okay with losing, the next piece of it is if you're going to be doing this for the long haul, let's say like, I'm okay with putting in this money reoccurring over time, 5 to 10 years, you're going to win every time. Like, I've done dollar cost averaging in the crypto space year over year. And like, you just win almost every single time if you're just consistently putting in money over time and like not caring about the ups and the downs. It's just, it works.
We 100% believe, I agree with that 100. Obviously that's why Swan exists. But yeah, dollar cost averaging, it removes the volatility, right? If it goes up, then you buy less. If it goes down, you buy more. It also just, it's a set or forget process. You set it up and you don't worry about it. A lot of people have tried to trade their way into more Bitcoin, and like so many people have gotten wrecked, right? It's just so easy. And again, it's because you're going up against guys who are professionals. They're here, they're living and breathing this stuff 24/7. Yeah. And you might get lucky a few times, but you're more than likely going to lose your stash over time if you keep doing that. So, sure. Dollar cost averaging, it's very low stress. You put on a thing and you don't look at it. And like you said, 5 to 10 years, for me, it's even 25 years. I think could it happen sooner? It could, but I think there's a generational component to the adoption of a new money that we can't underestimate, because it's not going to be our grandparents that are going to buy Bitcoin, right? It's going to be our children. So you have to look at it that way. And like any adoption, right? You didn't get Facebook until kids were born with the internet. I mean, Zuck was born an internet native, right? Like he was on the internet. Right. We're talking about people like that who build the next generation of these services that become very easy to use, right? Swan is here to onboard the current set of people, but my kids might get onboarded by a whole different concept. It might be very different to use Bitcoin by the time they grow up, right?
So real quick on Swan, walk me through the process. So if I want to get on the platform, what do I do and what does that look like?
Yeah, it's super simple. You go to swanbitcoin.com and basically you choose 3 things. 1 is how much money you want to save. 2 is how often. So it's every week, every month, every paycheck. We're also working on daily buys, which should be coming probably within the next month or so. But you basically choose, the period, how often, how much, and then you connect your bank account and you can type in, your checking account number, or you can do a link with Plaid, which is kind of this nice little, interface where you type in your username and password and it kind of does the bank link for you, whichever one you're comfortable with. And that sets up your Swan recurring purchase plan. And we also have this kind of idea of prepaying your fees, which lowers your fees. So our fees, the lowest fees we have are 0.99%, which is the lowest you'll find for this particular service, which is recurring purchases, recurring withdrawals from your bank account. And also we have automatic withdrawals back to your Bitcoin wallet when the Bitcoin is ready, which I don't believe anybody else has at this point. So, with Coinbase, you'll be paying, I don't even want to talk about it. It's completely
way
obscene.
higher.
Higher.
Yeah, Coinbase takes a lot of your money.
It's a ripoff. Now, if you're trading and you're doing that kind of thing, that's what the exchanges are for, right? We're not going to be able to beat exchanges on trading fees. But for automatic withdrawal from your bank account, automatic purchase of Bitcoin and automatic withdrawal back to your Bitcoin wallet, 0.99% is what you're going to get if you're doing annual prepay fees and you're saving $50 a week, which is the most common thing people do on our platform.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds really awesome. Everyone looking to get into the game and wants to set and forget and just, be accumulating some Bitcoin over time. Highly recommend going and checking out Swan Bitcoin. But real quick, Yan, while we got you, just a couple other questions. I mean, you've been in the space for a while. What are some things in the crypto space that has your attention right now?
You talk about the crypto space, and I know this is a crypto kind of podcast, which is cool. Whatever.
Oh, crypto and blockchain. Let me add the blockchain.
Crypto and blockchain. I really do think that Bitcoin is the thing to be looking at. It's really, really important, right? If you look at how money works, what is money, right? Money is what people want to have so they know they can spend it with the next person, right? So it's the most liquid thing. And it's very easy to prove. Like if you ask somebody, if I ask you, would you rather have $100 or $100 worth of paper clips? You probably want $100, right?
Right.
And it's because it's just the most, it's every time. It's the most, you could sell those paper clips on eBay or whatever, right? But there's that liquidity problem where you can't really just sell them very easily. With dollars, you know that the next person wants them. And with Bitcoin, it's the same thing. Bitcoin's got all the liquidity. The next 30 cryptos behind it combined, don't even get close. The number 10 crypto, last time I looked, they had 0.5% of Bitcoin's liquidity. So it falls off very, very quickly. For that reason, I think it's very important to pay attention to Bitcoin specifically and to watch what is happening in that space. A lot of concepts that people are creating these other coins in order to compete with Bitcoin on certain aspects. It doesn't matter if nobody has that coin or wants to, accept it for payment, right? And so the problem there is, you want again, it's the liquidity issue. People want to use the thing that's the most liquid. So I would keep an eye on Bitcoin. There's a lot of interesting developments in the space. There's Lightning Network. I know a lot of people have gotten kind of fed up with waiting for Lightning to come alive and work, but it is working. And there are some people taking it as payment. And again, it's too early. there's no reason you would spend your Bitcoin today when you know it's going to appreciate. You said it's going to $1 trillion at least. $1 trillion to me is a vast underestimation, right? Gold is 7 or 8 trillion. Keep in mind all of the real estate, the offshore bank accounts, all that stuff that people use to store value today. That should not be stored in real estate and offshore bank accounts. It should be stored in Bitcoin. So we're going to see more and more flows into that. And as that happens, we're going to see the Lightning Network become a more robust, very cool project I'm keeping an eye on called Strike by Jack Mallers, which allows you to instantly convert fiat to a Lightning payment, which is very cool. And so the person doesn't even know they're using Lightning; it just happens in the background. I'm also very interested in what's happening in the lending space. Companies like Unchained Capital, which allow you to lend your Bitcoin, but also do it in a very cool way because you can actually see that Bitcoin stored on chain in a multi-sig contract, so you know that it's not being moved or anything like that.
Right.
There's so much innovation happening, but it's just too early. We're just going to have to wait like 10 to 20 years for it to really flower. And I encourage everybody to be very patient because it's going to take that time.
Agreed. And while I'm in the space, while I'm trying to educate people on these opportunities, because a lot of people, again, think they missed the boat and that it's too late to be entering this market, but it's just so early in its infancy and just growing. So another quick question I have for you, Bitcoin halving is coming up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of speculation about what's going to happen. So just, to reiterate what that means is basically the amount of Bitcoin being produced roughly every 10 minutes is going to be cut in half. So basic supply and demand tells us if the supply goes down and the demand stays the same, then the price goes up. That's generally what's happened in the past 2 halvings. Now 2 halvings maybe are not enough data points to tell us what's going to happen next, but Bitcoin is becoming more scarce. That's basically a fact. Now, what's happening all over the world right now? If we're paying attention, we're seeing this meme called money printers go brr, right? The money printers are on full force. And why is that happening? Well, we had this big economic shutdown. Now, some people will say it's because of Corona, but it's not really because of Corona. What happened is, for the last 10 years, we quadrupled our money supply. We inflated the stock market. We had massive amounts of corporate share buybacks, inflating the price of stocks without actual, productivity gains. Yep. We have massive wealth disparity, which is going to get worse. So, this bubble was ready to pop. And now that it's popped, it's being reinflated at a rate that's just going to make the last 10 years look like a complete joke. The Fed's already at $6.5 trillion on their balance sheet. We went into the crisis with less than 4 trillion. It's going to keep going. I don't think this is very near the end. So what does that mean? This is happening all over the world. People are printing money like crazy in order to prop up these unrealistic asset prices. The rich are getting richer. The poor, well, they're losing their jobs and they're not investing in the stock market. I can tell you that. So they're missing out on all these gains. They don't own real estate. They're missing out on those gains. We're going to see more and more wealth disparity. We're going to see more money available in the world. And at some point, this bubble will burst. Whether this is the burst or whether we're going to be able to reinflate it is a big question. But when it does burst, people are going to have to realize that all prices everywhere are completely fake because they've been propped up by the central banks. So if they're fake and the money has been diluted, well, you have hyperinflation. And there's only one thing on this earth that doesn't hyperinflate. That's Bitcoin. So
yes, it is. The whole point it was made in the first place. And when I've been telling people over and over again, Bitcoin, it's essentially, and all crypto stems from Bitcoin. This was made in response to the first recession or the latest recession.
It was made. I mean, look at the message in the blockchain. Chancellor on brink of second bailouts for banks, right? And now, which bailout is this? I've lost count.
Oh my God. It's so bad.
We live in a world where bailouts are now normal. There's just all risk has been removed, right? If you're, United Airlines or whatever, you have no reason to have any money in your coffers because you could just keep piling on debt, knowing that when it collapses, the government's going to step in and save you. And that creates horrible inefficiencies in the economy. And it also creates horrible wealth inequality. So I would say to people, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm too poor. I can't afford Bitcoin. You're going to afford $5 a month. That's the minimum. Go to Swan Bitcoin, type in $5 a month and put $5 into Bitcoin every month. Yeah. Okay. It may not be much, but it's something. That's money that will not be taken from you. And that's better than the junk paperbacks, the greenbacks that you've got in your wallet that are losing value every single day. I promise. I mean,
definitely.
The inflation's here, man. It's been here. we've been lied to. I mean, we're told we have 2% inflation, but just look at the price of housing, education, healthcare. You can't afford it anymore. So the 2% inflation is a joke. That's not a thing. That's not real.
Yeah.
You've been lied to.
You're spitting really good points, and like everyone listening today, and like one of the reasons I was excited for this conversation is it's on par and it's on point with what's going on in the world right now. And I really appreciate all the knowledge you've been able to drop in the very important points. Everyone go back and listen to all of this, because again, the whole point of why crypto is around was in response to 2009 financial crisis. And a lot of what happened then is proving itself right now. And crypto so far has been holding strong, and which is a really big reason why I think the next couple of months, if not the next year, we could see some really big things happen in the crypto market. And again, Yan, I really appreciate your time. What is a final thought that you want to leave with all of our listeners here today?
I mean, my final thought as always is patience. Always have patience and never sell the bottom like I did. Don't be a fool. Hold on to what you've got. You know, it's a multi-generational thing. If it's not for you, it's not a get rich quick thing. It's not for you. It's for your kids. Okay. My Bitcoin's not for me. If I can use it, that's great. That's a nice bonus cherry on top. But I've got it for my kids because they're going to need it more than I will. So buy some Bitcoin for your kids.
That is a great final thought that I have not heard yet. So like, yes, you're buying some of this crypto. These are for your kids. So if you're looking at it for that long-term standpoint, they're probably gonna be really happy. On that point, my grandfather bought a bond when I was like 5 years old, right? And he gave it to me, or actually he passed away, and my mom gave it to me. It's like, your grandpa got this for you when you're at this whatever age. He spent, I think, $50, and then it had been worth like, I don't know, $200 or $300. And it just goes to show, like, when you're playing that long game,
that's funny, right? Like, you're totally right about that. That's what people used to do. They used to buy bonds to give to their children. And like, I got a bonds on my bar mitzvah when I was 13 that had some, percentage yield on them. But bonds these days have 0% yield, zero, and they're going negative all over the world. They're negative, and they're going to be negative here too, I think. Right. So bonds are no longer that thing that you can give to your children to, if you want a savings vehicle that appreciates over time, you're forced into risky investments. You're forced into the stock market, and then you're going to suffer 50% drops, because that's what the stock market does when it's been artificially inflated. So that's what Bitcoin's for, and I would also encourage your listeners, again, I know it's a multi-crypto podcast, but that's my litmus test is this something that I'm going to hold, and can my grandkids use this? Okay. If you're buying like, Raven coin to pass on to your grandkids, well, man, good luck to you. Nobody's doing that. Okay. Nobody's doing that. Bitcoin. Yes. There's inheritance planning around Bitcoin. There are lawyers that will do it for you. Everything else, I would probably hesitate to pass that on to my grandkids. Just think about that. If that's your litmus test for what is something that's worth holding on to, it will help you make the right decisions in these markets.
Awesome. Well, Yan, really appreciate your time. What are some different ways that people can connect with you?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is SKWP. It's pronounced Scoop. And you can also find the book Inventing Bitcoin at inventingbitcoin.com. And of course, you can find Swan at swanbitcoin.com. And we also have another product called Give Bitcoin, which is kind of part of the Swan family. So you can check it out at givebitcoin.io if you just want to give a gift of Bitcoin to your friend. You don't have to have the Bitcoin. We actually just, converted it from your bank account to their Bitcoin. So go ahead and give some Bitcoin, get people on board. It's a great way to get people on board. We'll hold their hand and we'll teach them all about it.
Excellent. Well, again, super appreciate your time. And for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Cryptocurrent. For more information on this episode and all of our episodes, please visit us at www.crypto-current.co. Stay up to date with the latest news in cryptocurrency. You'll receive daily emails Monday through Friday that are personalized and curated content specific to you and your interest, powered by artificial intelligence. Are you an accredited investor looking to invest in cryptocurrency? Crescent City Capital can help. Go to crescentcitycapital.com for more information. If you're finding value in our content, please take 5 minutes to leave a 5-star review and a great comment. Also, please make sure to share this podcast with others. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the quality of this podcast. I can only thank my amazing producer, Andrew DeRitter, with DeRitter Productions, who has put this together. If you have any podcast, visual, or video needs, please go to DeRitterProductions.com. That's DERITTER Productions.com.
Thanks Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Cryptocurrent with Richard Carthon. We'll be back with more exciting developments from the world of blockchain and cryptocurrency next week. But until then, stay cryptocurrent.
Please use available exits now.